Hi Peregrine, welcome to the studio. First question, what effect has automation had on insurance premiums for ports and terminals?
I think the first point to make is that obviously the calculation of insurance premiums is quite a complex risk assessment, and there are a whole range of factors that will be brought into that, looking at sometimes the sort of political, economic relationship to what's happening in that entity, but also fundamentally around their loss history. And of course that is relevant when you come to look at automation, because you may be making a particular change between what historically was the case and what is now the case. But it is effectively down to an assessment of the risks in that environment. And that means that you will look at things around valuation, obviously. You'll also look at the way that the equipment has been implemented. So the risk assessment actually needs to go below the surface and think about what that environment, that operational environment, is actually undertaking. The values themselves are likely to go up, so that is a factor, but the reduction of the human element, which can account for as much as 90% of a sort of a loss scenario, means that that materially will impact risk and potentially reduce things. But it is something that is done over time. It isn't that implement equipment now gives an immediate reduction. You're always looking at the whole range of risk factors.
So how has the introduction of the new VGM rules changed the industry?
Very interesting question. TT Club was fundamentally involved in the whole process through IMO to see that the SOLAS amendment was framed and then implemented in a way that seemed proportionate and appropriate for the industry. We worked actively with shipper organisations, Global Shippers Forum primarily, ICHCA from the terminal side, and then World Shipping Council on the ship line side. And we produced quite a lot of information to support the implementation. I think from an insurance perspective alone, it's probably made very little difference, in the sense that anything that looks to change safety environment, the culture, is inevitably downstream going to help. But it isn't as though we've suddenly turned off a load of claims that were happening. There were very few claims that were directly related to weight, and particularly on board ship. So in that sense, insurance probably hasn't been impacted, hasn't even blinked. But in terms of what we see going forward, I think that it's a very important change in the industry, a stake in the ground in terms of safety culture, but on its own probably hasn't made that much impact to safety. And I say that for two reasons. Firstly, the feedback we've had from the limited number of places where there are check weighing processes happening would appear to indicate that there is nominal compliance. In other words, someone has found a value to put in the VGM box, but not necessarily the right value. We're finding quite significant discrepancies in excess of a tonne. On top of that, government implementation around the world, national government implementation, has been restricted, shall we say, and that's for a whole variety of reasons that could go into, but I think that that's sufficient to say that. But as I say, safety has to some extent improved. There is more interaction between the stakeholders, improved messaging, and that will only help. But I think it is only part of what needs to be done. And certainly from our perspective, from an insurance perspective, what we've seen all the way through is that weight alone is not the major cause of accidents. It's all to do with eccentric packing or poor packing processes that most of the time will give rise to the incidents happening, and weight may be one of the factors in there, but not a major causative factor.